Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to yet another very special effort. In exactly about 22 years from now, viewers, we will be a 100-year-old nation. The vision for a Viksit Bharat by 2047 is a very ambitious one, but it's not impossible. And one of the cornerstones for being able to get there, a Viksit Bharat, is of course economy. Amid Trump, tariff, trade, a lot of tantrums, and of course a global trend of economic nationalism, what is it that we as a nation need to do? Where is the recalibration required for us to get onto a growth path that will take us to a Viksit Bharat? So on the cusp of the Independence Day, let's have this conversation on economics and how much will geopolitics influence this, how much will sociological changes, tugs and pulls influence that, with some very renowned economists and also those who have been regular here at CNN News 18, almost integral to the CNN News 18 conversation around Bharat. P.K. Basu, economist with us, Saket Mishra, investment banker and economist with us, and we also have Rajat Dhar, Director Investments, India Federation for Investors and Global Traders. My namaste and Jai Hind to you. Thank you very much. Let's have an engaging conversation and let's make it free-flowing and interactive, so you don't need to wait for my questions. Anytime you want to chip in, you are free to take over. You are subject matter experts. So, PKG, let me ask you, Trump, whatever he's saying, the tariffs and this entire agenda of bullying and a certain level of idiocy that's coming across, lies that are coming across, must be quite frustrating for the Prime Minister to hold restraint, to show that restraint that we generally as a nation show. Your thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, Trump is driven by personal agendas more than anything else. We are not willing to engage with his corrupt agenda, and therefore it becomes very difficult for us to come up with a negotiating strategy that works with him. Unfortunately, our negotiating team was looking at 25th August as the next negotiation and a bilateral trade agreement by middle of October. But Trump's deadline was 1st of August. I think we were aware of this, and we should have, I think we should have negotiated an agreement that is consistent with what Japan, Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, the EU, the UK have all negotiated, which basically is nothing very clear, nothing very specific, but you agree to most of what Trump is saying in exchange for a substantially reduced tariff on all your exports to the US. So if we had agreed to that, we would have got 10 to 15% tariff rate on all our exports, which would have been a huge advantage relative to China in particular, to Vietnam and others. And we have the opportunity. I think when we're talking about Viksit Bharat, what is really required is labor-intensive manufacturing to take off big time. If you look at labor-intensive manufacturing, it employs about just over 13 million people in this country, and has done so for the last 20 years. There's been no change, no increase. Our exports of labor-intensive products, textiles, garments, shoes, toys, processed food, are about 1/9 of China's. So we could easily triple that share over, say, a 5-year period, and go from basically take only 1/3 of what China does, and that would triple the amount that we export of those products, and it would generate millions of jobs. You could go from 13 million to 30 million people employed in that sector. Now, apart from that, if you think about something like Apple, now Apple has committed massively to India. Tim Cook said at the recent results conference of his company that almost all iPhones exported into the US market are now made in India. That is a remarkable shift. Now, that is jeopardized if electronics is included within the 25% plus tariff rate that Trump is proposing. He is a mercurial, unpredictable president, and also somewhat venal. So given that, it's difficult to negotiate with him, but nonetheless, I think we should have negotiated a deal and got along with it.
But the negotiations are on. There is also this thought process that although the American exports contribute to 2% of Bharat's GDP, and of which about nearly 1.5% is exempt of tariffs. So tariffs, and the weighted tariff is only about 4.6%. So Saket Mishra, what's all this hue and cry about? And they continue to do business truck with Russia. And when Trump was asked about it, he acted as if he didn't know. So
it's quite possible he didn't know. I mean, given where things are. But I think I do not think we could have reached an agreement with him, primarily because our situation and our economy and what we do and the people that we need to take care of, for example, the small farmer, is a lot more complex than anything that, let's say, EU or Japan have.
Right.
We have a very different and diverse sort of set of people that we take care of. Second is that with Trump, it's a case of moving goalposts all the time. So it was first about trade, first about 2 sectors, then it became 5 sectors, then 10 sectors, then it became about BRICS because we want to protect the US dollar, then it became about Russian oil. None of which actually really matter in a trade deal.
Well, it's the trade imbalance, the deficit, $45 billion trade
that's
deficit.
It.
That's irking him.
I don't think we were ever going to, I don't think there was any intention, or even if we had reached a deal, knowing Trump, after all, he had reached a deal with Canada, he had reached a deal with Mexico, I don't think we could necessarily have counted on him to actually not put further tariffs on us. But the more important thing here, which PK also alluded to, is that, and you had said at the start, that India has not responded in the sort of volatile fashion that Trump wants us to.
Yeah.
We have kept quiet, we stuck to the process. There is a certain delegation of the Americans coming. My gut feel would be that there will be some sort of period which Trump always gives, 90 days, 60 days, 45 days, whatever it is, after he realizes that we are not going to immediately kowtow to his bullying, and we will get to a solution that is a win-win for everybody. If we don't, I think Indian economy is strong enough to actually not just withstand it. If we suddenly decided to go after various markets, we can. And it's not like we do not have levers with the US. I mean, there is the defense, there is US educational system, there is high tech that we are buying from them. So it's not like we're just sitting there unable to survive without them. There are thousands of US jobs that are on the line. So I am sure that we are going to take a constructive approach to it. But I think we need to take him as Trump is. He's a unique phenomenon in the world economy. And we need to stick to our courses and stick to our red lines.
True. You talked about manufacturing, labor intensive. The setup with the UK, it's been more than 15 years in the making and conversation ever since Brexit happened. But last 3 years, we've been able to strike. Does that perhaps give Indian exporters, our markets also, an opportunity to say, okay, let's look beyond the US. If he's going to play truant, let's open up new possibilities. EU could also happen by September, Rajat. So where do you stand? How do you see this?
So fundamentally, if I may put a foundation to this discussion, is that the condition of Trump right now is like, मेरी बीवी मेरा सुन नहीं रही, और उस केस में मतलब मेरा पति मेरा सुन नहीं रहा, and she's throwing tantrums everywhere. So Trump is behaving like that woman. Now the point is, he needs to understand there was one moment when the World War II completed and the power shifted from UK to US. Then, like earlier in 1600, it shifted from India to UK. So this is that period where you think that you will have a hegemony. You won't have, because inherently when there is economy growing up, country making money, you have a good human capital and earning potential, there will always be frictions coming in. Now the point is, the problem with Trump psychologically is that he wants to score goals. US has already lost much of the ground. So what he can do? Okay, I will do trade, I will put spanner here, I will put spanner there, Putin is not listening to me. Okay, he has to score some scoring points anywhere and everywhere he could do. Now the point is, even if he doubles up the tariff tomorrow, what would happen? Will Bangladesh start exporting the money products another day itself? Say for example, if you just take Pharma here, they are talking about, okay, our patented drugs are being taxed at 150% in India, for example. You are also importing our generic pharma. You are saving $220 billion on your medical expenses itself. You tax Indian pharma generic medicines over there. What Indian pharma companies like Reddy's and Ciplas will do? They will either absorb that shock certain matter, or pass on to their customers, or whatever they will do. But whatever the Trump does it will provide time for all the players. Whom? India, who is at the suffering end. Secondly, the US citizens who will be bearing the burn.
Yeah, there will be a surge in inflation,
Exactly.
no? Because things will become expensive.
This will, and mind you, this is a very good thing that Trump is doing for us, because we had become psychologically, mentally dependent. Ki, okay, we have 20% of our biggest trading partner US, we are doing this, we are doing that. What happened in COVID was an eye-opener for everybody. Okay, China +1 policy. What the US is doing, okay, we will not keep our currency in US dollars, we will rather keep in gold. So what we have seen is that the gold ETFs did not increase in the quantum of gold, but the gold itself as a physical commodity was bought by treasuries. So therefore, when I see this as a problem, this could be the inflection point for India to first make reforms in core infrastructure, because in India the cost is 14%, like in developing countries 14% of the GDP cost goes into infrastructure. In developed countries it is 8%. If we quick that spanner, only 0.21% of our trade happens inland. In Germany it is much more. So the point is, while we are doing Bharatmala, it has its own limitations, while the infrastructure is being developed. The point is, if I am improving infrastructure, whether that is coastlines, whether that is internal network, now whatever the industry I am talking about, we still are having 80% inbound consumption. So even if we focus on different sectors, because we have to net of the cost, okay, whatever the US is doing, India is going to suffer. Now if I have having an impact of 0.25% on my GDP, where I can net it off. Can I improvise it on the infrastructure so I can save it up? Can I do it into the trade imbalance? I can do it off. There are imbalances not only in case of the tariffs that we do, but also in terms of that ki bhai, there are certain trade limitations, like you have to do following testing for your electronic items, you have to do these drug testing. So there are certifications like import licensing and all.
Yeah, sanitary and phytosanitary, they say,
exactly.
or even TBS,
So if we formalize and normalize that, we are into very close negotiation, FTA with Australia and all of these UAE and other countries. So the point is, if we are improving infrastructure, that will spread to 10 different sectors altogether. So automatically leverage come there. Yes, we might be having couple of quarters under stretch with us, but if we put the policy framework and put the road pushing forward, at least some improvisation would happen. Not only that, what catch we are having? We have two ways. We will continue buying from Russia. We are having saste mein petrol. We are refining it. Okay, we cannot export it. Our import bill is less. We are blending it with ethanol till 20. We are benefiting from there. So okay. But if I go the US way and I am buying from Saudi Arabia and all, I am paying them high, but again my inflation goes up. So I have to make a trade of my GDP, my growth, my education. Now, which industries will be impacted?
But even there, I'll tell you, there is a price cutoff that you have to buy above that price. You have to buy Russian oil above that price. Bharat is buying above that price.
Below that price.
Bharat is buying below that price. And also, this was something which was in agreement with the Americans. They said that you don't disrupt the global oil prices and don't create an energy crisis.
US benefits. The US benefits from, not just US, Trump, when he came in, one of the first things he did was to take actions to push oil prices down. And one of the reasons why inflation in the US has stayed lower than most economists expected is because of oil. Oil prices have come down sharply. Now, if India truly is banned from buying oil from Russia, and if everybody is banned from buying oil from Russia, the price of oil will shoot up. So the point is that we are actually helping the US, because a lot of the oil that we buy from Russia is refined in India and then exported to the US. So it benefits the US consumer, in fact.
And we're not buying from Russian state, we are buying from
private
entities.
I'm not sure logic works. I think he talked about Trump wants to score a goal. I don't think it's a normal goal he likes. He wants the goalkeeper to come to his feet, take the ball and throw it into the goal. That's what's going to. So it's a. But I think the other point, I genuinely think this is a short-term measure. Trump, the fact is, all his tantrums are going to hurt the poorest of the poor Americans. And that is supposedly his core, right? And it's going to hurt the Republican Party like nobody's business in the midterms. But it's also time for us to introspect about what we want to do. I think the satisfaction that he was talking about, and we were talking about industriousness just now, just before the show. We need to think about what are the things that we can do well as a country, both for export, in terms of diversifying it and increasing it, and improving our own, the quality, I would say, of our economy.
Right.
So what are our strengths? Our strength is our digitization and our science and technology. So if you look at space, for instance, space and dual use sort of defense plus kind of commodities, that where there are very few people in the world that produce at the kind of costs that we can produce at.
Yeah.
And there's a whole world open for us, which till today was dominated by NASA and the Europeans. Similarly, consumer goods. The fact is that our domestic economy and the large number of consumers we have offers a huge backstop for creating mass produced. I mean, why is Apple producing? It's not because they like our eyes. It's because we have a bunch of people who can produce at good cost and at a pricing that makes sense. And it should be spread across sectors, because guess what? If let's say 10%, 20% falls happen because of tariffs or because of markets, we have a domestic economy that can absorb that at any point of time. So we are a natural fit for that kind of. And third is things like fintech, where again the world requires Indian expertise. I mean, if you look at UPI, Beam, I mean, Beam is, I'm shocked that it's not been listed. But Beam is worth $2-3 billion just as a pure infrastructure that we have built up. So we have the thing. So I think it's time to also think of moving away from just the low end, let's say IT, the low end even generic pharma, because eventually that generic pharma, with the kind of production changes that are happening in the world, may disappear, because you could have AI design new drugs or copy new drugs, etc. So it's a great opportunity, and I think the comparison to the COVID moment is very real. And we should ignore Trump to a large extent as a short-term blip, but it should 100% be a chance for us to actually make our economy fit for purpose for the next, till let's say this 2047 Viksit Bharat thing. And what can we do to get our people upskilled? What can we do to set up the ecosystem to, people talk about, we have inequality of income, right? The fact is that the problem is not having one Ambani or one Tata or one Birla. That is a problem for us. The problem is not that they exist. We should be having 50 Ambanis, 50 Tatas and 50 Birlas, and we need to create the ecosystem, because the jobs will come from there, not from run of the mill, what we've done for the last 70 years. Our mindset has to change.
And adding on to the defense part that sir added, what we can see it when we are focusing on 2047, and if we just simply follow one business formula, we know that whatever the business is there, 20% of the 80% of the returns come from 20% of the effort. So the point is, if we are now at such an inflection point where we have limited resources, obviously we are limited of task force with us, the focus of government is also limited. So rather than spreading ourselves thin, what government can do and should do is, they have to identify certain sectors and areas where they know that, okay, yes, our GDP is going impacted, chahe either we go Russian way or the US way. In either case, we will have certain costs to bear. Now the question is, if we have limited resources, we can split our agenda into two parts. Short term, that means starting from here till next 2 years. Second, 2 years onwards and onward. That means, like for example, defense. If we put our time, energy there, and it is easier to double our output there, like defense exports we have seen as an example.
Correct.
So the point is, in next 2 years, focus more resources and all where we are getting too much of cushion right now, so that the impact on GDP is not there, employability remains, we are still competitive. And in the meantime, by long-term effects, like whether you talk about the labor reforms you have to do, you have to build up the infrastructure, you have to work in agri or millets exports, or even see where those millets or agri value-added exports, not exports, value-added exports. Say for example, we have Amul going processed foods to Europe or to Australia or other. So can that be new markets can be explored or not? So therefore, what we can do is, we can divide our tenure into two parts. One which can have immediate results we can see. So therefore, short term 80% of the revenue should be made by 20% of the efforts, and the main effort, 80% effort that we do, should go for something that should go 2 years beyond that. So I think that policy level discussion should be the way forward, rather than thinking hame 2047 hai na, 2035 se we will see results. That is not going to be the game. We will be dinosaur by that time. There will be another
so I think I'd like to just differ on a few things even with Saket, which is basically that, first of all, Trump is around for another 3.5 years. The US is by far the largest market. China is potentially a large market, but it doesn't import anything. So
Right.
forget about China. Russia is very small. So if we are thinking about international trade as being important to us, the United States is truly important. We cannot ignore the United States. We can negotiate up to October, but the idea is that if we're negotiating till October, we need to get a deal done with the United States that is satisfactory not only to the negotiators, but to their boss. It has to be whatever it is that will be acceptable to Trump, I think should be part of what we negotiate in the end, because we have to deal with him for another 3.5 years. And why this is important is because the demographic dividend is available to us for another 15 to 20 years
Yeah.
at most.
Yes.
And it is vitally important not to lose 3.5 years. We cannot afford to lose 3.5 years. And therefore, now if you think about international trade, you know, we often sort of overlook the fact that our total exports of goods and services in 1991 was $28 billion.
Correct.
And by services, I include income also, including remittances. So if you look at all so-called invisibles as well as merchandise, that has gone from $28 billion in 1991 to $1,003 billion in 2024 calendar year.
Correct.
So that enormous shift has had a huge impact. I mean, it's an almost invisible impact on jobs, prosperity, on the ability to import, and on the level of prosperity of the
Correct.
country. So that, you know, we can, and this is
Yeah, but-
without fully achieving the potential that we have, you know, especially in labor-intensive manufacturing.
But the thing is, PK, that all right, Bharat has gone from 28 to 1003, but all the other nations have also gone up. Okay, we've climbed up the ladder in the last decade and a half, and we are the third largest economy in the world, or soon to be, and we will continue to stay, although there is a huge gap between us and second place China, and then far bigger gap with the US. But let me just bring it back to, are we on the right track? Let's take this forward. Now, beyond Trump, are we on the right track? And Saket and then everybody, are we on the right track? Or do you think there is any weight or merit when a Trump and a Rahul Gandhi echo that we are a dead economy like Russia is? Or they say that, you know, this is nothing but crony capitalism, the rich are getting richer, poor are getting poorer, and India's got no money, average per capita is not on the rise, this is just notional, this third largest GDP in the world, etc., third largest economy in the world and all. So are we on the right track, or do we need some serious recalibration?
I don't think our leader of opposition, I don't know whether he still is or not, or who.
No, he is the LOP in the room.
So he's a LOP. Whether he should be taken seriously, because I suspect even, I mean, I remember the visuals on your channel, when he was speaking, even his own party people behind him, including his sister, I think were worried about what he was saying. But, you know, he has a right to say that, and he has a right to view. The fact is that you're the fastest growing major economy in the world. The fact is that last year we had, in the recent year, we had $80 billion plus of FDI coming into the country, and they're not coming into the country because they want to do charity to us. They're coming because they're going to make their post foreign exchange returns on the investments they make here. The fact that our foreign exchange reserves are increasing, I think we are absolutely on the right track. I myself, I remember when Mr. Modi started talking about things like millets, etc., I wasn't sure where this was going. But the fact is that there is a change happening in the world. So millets by itself may sound small, but what we are talking about is changing the worldview on what people are going to be consuming. Will they want that processed food that's putting microplastics into a body? And there is this whole opportunity that Mr. Modi has identified today to take the economy to the next level. And therefore, I think so there is this whole science and tech piece that's going on, which will be, and there is a world outside. See, the fact is, US is not going to buy satellite time from us.
Yeah.
But all of Africa will, Brazil will, a lot of Southeast Asia will. I mean, nobody wants to pay 3 times the price. So we have this whole science and tech base. We have a fintech base, which everybody wants. And the world is changing in terms of what they want. And India, despite all the imperial colonialism we have had to suffer, India today, with our traditions, need to switch back our traditions in some things to actually cater to that demand. So we absolutely, opportunity is there. We need to make sure that we access that opportunity and close it.
PK wanted to say something, so Rajat, let him, and because he's been itching, he's been waiting. So, get him in.
No, I think with regard to being a dead economy, that's absurd. That's ludicrous. We are the fastest growing economy in the world by a long way. The gap between us and the next fastest G20 growing economy is substantial. And in fact, we've grown 8.2% a year on average for the last 4 years. I think we're going to grow 8% regardless of what Trump does this year. 8% in real terms, at least, because there's interest rates are coming down, and interest rates are coming down because inflation is down. That's an achievement. The current account is close to surplus. In fact, the latest data for the latest quarter was a surplus. So just remember that we are a strong economy. Our public debt numbers are improving relative to a world where everybody is going up and is looking ludicrously
is despite
expensive.
Operation Sindoor and a conflict like that,
So
bearing
the
on the
point
budget.
is that our external debt is down as a percent of GDP sharply. It was 24% in 2014, it's now 17%.
And debt to GDP.
So debt to GDP obviously is down. So now the point is that we are on a substantially improving path on any indicator, and especially if you look at our infrastructure. The infrastructure improvements, even the economist, which is skeptical about India, always has had to acknowledge several times in the past 2 years the remarkable achievements on the infrastructure front that are occurring in India. Now the point is, once you have a substantially improved world-class infrastructure, how do you capitalize on it? By exporting to the world. No, I mean, some of our stuff, exports of invisibles perhaps don't need the infrastructure, but goods is where we can really begin to capitalize, because we now have world-class infrastructure. We need to capitalize on it and export as much as possible. Now, when you talk about agriculture and dairy, now this is a bugbear for me. I think, having lived all over the world, the US, UK, Singapore, lots of parts of Asia, India's dairy products are world beating. I have nephews and nieces living in the US who come here, and the first thing they go is to Mother Dairy. Everything at Mother Dairy is half the price of what it is in the US. So this is, and Amul, Mother Dairy are world class in terms of cost competitiveness. We are very competitive with the world in dairy. In agriculture, we're the world's biggest exporter of rice. If we choose, we'll be the world's biggest exporter of wheat. We're choosing not to export. We're just keeping the surplus in FCI go-downs. But if we choose to export,
it's also food security. So the whole entire food security program is being managed with the surplus.
Now, Japan, the cost of production of rice in Japan is about 7 or 8 times what it is on the world market. Japan apparently has allowed the US to export beef and rice to Japan. Let's see how much the US is able to export to Japan. They'll find phytosanitary standards, etc., to stop it. I can assure you. There'll be non-tariff barriers that will be invisible. Some will be saying, there's no proper Japanese labeling. I don't know, whatever it is, they will come up with some way of preventing a flood of American rice, which is much cheaper than Japanese rice. Now, we have millions of farmers. But the interesting thing is, if you look at our economy, the percentage of people employed in agriculture has declined sharply over the last 30 years. It declined sharply even over the first 6 years of the Modi administration. Then during COVID, there was a setback. We had people going back into agriculture. But if you look at the last 5 years, employment growth in every sector of India has been growing faster than any other. If you look at, there's something called the CLEMS database. Hardly anybody looks at it, but it is published by the RBI every year in July. The last one, I looked at it in great detail, and what is interesting is that there's been a substantial improvement in employment across all sectors.
Including agriculture.
Agriculture has seen an increase, but there's been 8 million additional jobs in manufacturing over the last 3 years. Of which there was data, the last data was 22, 23. So now the point is that even in manufacturing, we're seeing employment growth. That is probably accelerating even as we speak. But in order for that to continue, we need to access the global market. We've done well with the UK FTA. We are probably getting close to an FTA with the EU. We have ones with Australia. South Korea and Japan we've had since 2010. We've had with ASEAN. Now, those need to be tweaked, but the point is that we have good trade agreements with a lot of countries. The U.S. is supposedly an ally. We need to ensure that the U.S. and we stay on the same side. There is no way that we can have China as an ally. The simple fact is, no matter how much we love China, we've been loving China since Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai in 1950, allowed them to take over our neighbor which has always been our neighbor. The Atisa Dipankar from Bengal took Buddhism to Tibet. It was Tibet, it was not China. It was never part of China. Tibet has never been part of China, and yet we allowed it to happen. Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. There's no Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai because Chini ke log हमारे भाई नहीं होने चाहते हैं. You see, so the simple fact is they don't. I mean, it's not them. It's their Communist Party. Sir, maybe the Chinese want to be, but not the Communist Party of China, which rules that country.
As the doctor says to us as people, it's the same thing for the country ki chini kam karo. so yes, Rajat. So let's take it forward in terms of, you also talked about policy, what we need to do as a country. The indices show we are on a growth path, but are we getting the policy right? Do we, and what are the tweaks that we need? So the final round of conversation that we'll do in this.
I will just connect 2 points. One,
conversation on economy can be interesting, viewers. So yeah. Yes,
so I will just touch 2 points on it. One from the previous section, which I was trying to add, and one whether we are getting our policies right. Yes, we are getting our policies right in a sense that what we had been doing 20 years back or 15, 18 years back, we are really better off from that path. एक होता है कि you are not starting off the road. At least we have started setting up the roads. We are thinking about it. We are at least making the policy framework. We are implementing it, and we are implementing also. And yes, Bharatmala project, for example, would be meeting roadblocks, would be extending. Having said that, everything, because कहते हैं ना कि गिरते हैं शह सवारी मैदानी जंग में, वो तिफर क्या गिरे जो घुटनों के बल चले. घोड़े पे बैठे हैं, शह सवार किया है, शेर की सवारी की है, तो गिरेंगे तो सही, वो चीज़ होगी. So as far as policy framework is concerned, whether that you talk labor reforms 2023 had been done, कि पहले ये होता था कि 100 employees से ज़्यादा हैं, then you can't retrench it without government approval. So these were all bottlenecks to it. So 87% of the MNCs were actually having lesser employees. So from policy side it is okay, but when we are talking about is government doing the right thing, the question should be what the government should have to do on which 2 or 3 aspects. The different, if we see that US is slapping rates on 2, say India, China and Russia, ठीक है, Russia doesn't give a shit कि इधर क्या करना है, मैंने 4 साल से कर रहा हूँ, रोक पाया लड़ाई, नहीं रोक पाया, I am still there. China, भाई मैं ले नहीं रहा हूँ कुछ. अब बात आती है इंडिया की. Now India has a very peculiar problem. India has an opposition which can digress, divert. There are people who can raise the farmers' protest and block the national capital region. There could be a Red Fort issue, there could be an issue in Bengal. The problem is, in India, the fractured line is different. So therefore, the government may decide a policy, may implement a policy, but the policy will not get communicated to the end people. The policy would be working. Jaise the sir rightly said, employment rate got improved, this got improved. Frankly speaking, if you ask me, I am from the wealth management itself, but really speaking, for the first time, like sir saying ki I have seen in all the parameters the job growth has gone up. I was not having that information. Let me be very frank. So what we are talking about, a middle class person and normal. Now what battle we are fighting apart from these policy initiatives is also a narrative, a perception. Like if I am not wrong, I was a kid right at that time जब हम कहते हैं कि जब वाजपेयी government did pre-election and कौन सा था अच्छी there was narrative अच्छे दिन or something, अच्छे दिन आएंगे, and they lost the elections. I think BJP technically had been bad at narratives, we know that. The government itself had been bad at narratives. Congress or other people are able to paint the stories, do the blah blah and all those Notanki and Mandli being on the stage. So the catch is, while we are making the policies, and when Trump says ki yes, it is a dead economy, if we at dead economy are here, then actually Trump is standing there with Rahul Gandhi, because we are among the top 5 economies in the world. At what speed are we growing? You are already on the uphill, we would be obviously 3 kilometers down, but our speedometer is at a different trajectory pace altogether. So what is our acceleration? I am talking about acceleration. As an acceleration, our economy is growing. It can't grow if we don't have a policy.
Correct. No, you talk about acceleration, Rahul Gandhi talks about escape velocity. So, but and his own personal portfolio has gone up by
45 lakhs.
No, more than that. I think it's
45%. I believe.
Yeah, 45%. Yeah. So it's gone up quite a bit. So, but he still believes in a dead economy. If your portfolio is growing by 45%, I'd like to be part of that dead economy. But yeah, in terms of policy, what do we need to do? Final word, PK.
I think I would just, I mean, 2 points before I start on that. One, very quickly, is that I don't think we should be emotional about the US. The US is not emotional about us, which has positive and negatives. I mean, which also means that there is a relationship that we have with the US that is much beyond trade. The fact is, the US and India together as a security and sort of strategic grouping will exist irrespective of who is in power, because there is a huge infrastructure there. Second, I think there is an element of incumbency dislike for other people climbing in all this exercise that's happening. It's not just within, not just with the US, but the European whole talk of, you know, we are more sustainable and everything else than you is part of that, because they don't want us coming up. But specific policy, I think for us, as I've said earlier, it's all about opportunity. And the specific opportunity that we need to look at is agriculture. I agree with PK completely that what we produce with a mother dairy or an Amul is top quality. But we can't give that up, because unlike Japan, even today we have got most of our farmers being marginal sized holdings. How do we help them? So that, to my mind, is a big shift in cooperatives, and also things like when you talked about infrastructure earlier, I think it's the infrastructure for let's say cold logistics. Getting, and I mean, I sound political, but having a person who's committed to cooperatives as the chief of that department is going to give new life, because there's a vision that says that, guess what, cooperatives is not about helping inefficiency, but it's about creating economic negotiating strength for our farmers. And I think that infrastructure of logistics and getting what happens today, when I produce, somebody produces mangoes in Shravasti, there are rich guys who come because the farmer can't get it to the markets in time. They basically come and buy it at rock bottom prices. So out of every 100 rupees, the farmer gets 10 rupees, 15 rupees at max. What we need to do in terms of infrastructure, and would be my request to the government also, is to create the infrastructure that allows the farmer, through transparency of mandis, through better logistics, to actually get to 60% of the 100 rupees of production.
So the farm laws wanted to do that in a way, but that was shot down by, because like what you said, that the opposition decided to take the gun in one and a half states, took the whole country and its farmers to ransom. The other thing is, this cooperatives movement can also be used to try and strengthen, give economic heft there and build infrastructure in a way that it comes to the use of the cooperatives.
I mean,
and the
they can actually fund some of the infrastructure.
Cooperatives, Amul is a classic example. You know, when Lal Bahadur Shastri became Prime Minister, he spent 2 nights at Anand to understand this, and then he introduced Mother Dairy in Delhi. Now the point is that it is, what is a cooperative? A cooperative is a way of creating a management framework around small farmers. I mean, you have small farmers who are producing stuff, but if you can create a well-managed infrastructure, which is what Fonterra in New Zealand does, then you can become globally competitive. And essentially, we already have that in Amul and Mother Dairy. Why not take it to the world? That's simple. And I think we can do similar things with other agricultural products
with
as
apple,
well.
with millets, with fox millets. So much can be done.
Absolutely, we can. And this government, I think, is putting in place a lot of the infrastructure, despite the repealing of the farm laws. Now, apart from this, I think the other thing that's required is, I agree that labor market reform is absolutely essential. Also, I think one other little point that keeps coming up is that India is very unequal, etc. You know, the interesting thing is, if you look at our Gini coefficient, the latest year that the World Bank has data for, our numbers now, the Gini coefficient firstly is better than almost everybody in Asia, with the exception of Japan and Taiwan. With those 2 exceptions, I mean, those 2 are about the same as us, but our Gini coefficient is the same now as it was in 1987. Okay, and it is better. That is, we are a less unequal society than anybody in Asia, and we are as unequal now, or as equal now, as we were prior to the economic reforms of 1991. So this narrative is not data based. It is a completely false storyline that keeps getting reiterated over time. Now, another reason why I think inequality has declined in India, inequality has improved in India, is for the simple reason that this government has done direct benefit transfer. With direct benefit transfer, with things like free food grain for 830 million people, there is a dramatic improvement in the consumption and income to the rural poor.
Right.
Okay, so now what else is required? Very, very crucial is labor market reform. What this government has already enacted is good. It was passed in 2020. It has not yet been notified. Now, some of the states could notify it, but the important thing is the states and the center need to notify the farm laws and start implementing them in full, because they have the potential to create millions of jobs and to enable small Indian companies to grow in labor-intensive manufacturing. So, for instance, we have lots of small textile manufacturing factories, little ones, in compliance with the existing law, which basically makes it very difficult to scale up. So, if you allow economies of scale, the unit cost of production comes down, and that improves your effective competitiveness globally.
Absolutely.
And that is what we are not fully taking advantage of because of the legacy farm laws. If the legacy farm laws are gradually dismantled in accordance with what was already passed in 2020 and with a few tweaks, then India can really take advantage of the enormous potential of moving people from agriculture to manufacturing services.
Right. So the government has said they'll take back the farm laws, but they've not been, but they still stand ratified by Parliament. They've just not been.
It's been repealed.
It's been repealed. So they'll have to bring it back if that's the case.
No,
so
see, the farm laws,
then the labor laws also
are politically difficult. Labor laws have not been repealed. There's
so
no repeal.
they need to be notified. So and also work on those core sectors which actually Bharat is trying to protect right now, the interests of the farmer, the agricultural sector, and also the Udyamis or the MSMEs, as we are saying, and that's where the real potential is. All in all, it looks bright, but we've got to continue on this path and perhaps just pick up the speed and acceleration. Amazing conversation, gents. Didn't realize that we've way past time, but thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.